I'm reiterating my call for every governor, mayor, and local leader to maintain and reinstate the mask mandate. Please, this is not politics. Reinstate the mandate if you let it down. And business should require masks as well. The failure to take this virus seriously, precisely what got us in this mess in the first place, risks more cases and more deaths. Look, as I do my part to accelerate the vaccine distribution and vaccinations, I need the American people to do their part as well. Mask up. Mask up. It's a patriotic duty. It's the only way we ever get back to normal. To cheer together in stadiums full of fans. To gather together on holidays again safely. Go to graduations, weddings.
You just saw and heard Joe Biden lie to the American people. He said he still wants everybody to wear a mask despite being vaccinated. That means that the vaccine is irrelevant. Does it not? He said it's not about politics. Of course, it's completely about politics. The director of the CDC, who works for Joe Biden, Rochelle Walensky, just said on March 30th that data suggests that vaccinated people do not carry the virus. That means they won't get sick, and it means they won't spread it. They're not contagious. So why should everybody continue to wear a mask? Because wearing a mask is the sign of submission. It's the sign of conformity. And that's what I'm here to discuss today. Again, the theme is equity trumps equality. And it might not look that way at first, but you'll see I'm going to tie all of this together. I'm Marc Rudov, branding advisor to CEOs and author of 3 books for CEOs on branding. Be Unique or Be Ignored, Brand is Destiny, and my latest, Intra-Branding. I hope you'll read all 3. I've updated my panoramic Marxism slide one more time because it's really important. I've added masks and guns to the collage of influences on our society. Everything that is on this slide is absolutely true, and you know it. Recently in Boulder, Colorado, a crazy lunatic from Syria, a Muslim, killed 10 people. They were all white. Immediately, the left-wing media said it was a white guy who did it, because that's the narrative. When they found out that the killer was not white, they changed the narrative to gun control. Antonio Branco, who posts a lot of his cartoons on LinkedIn, created this very accurate cartoon, 3-panel cartoon. The first panel says, this is the mainstream media here, a white gunman killed 10 people in Boulder. Then colleague whispers into his ear, he was Syrian. Then all of a sudden, lack of gun laws killed 10 people in Colorado. That's exactly what happened. And that's exactly what they do. But there's a reason they're doing this. Just a few days ago, John Schnatter, the founder of Papa John's Pizza, just brought to light evidence that he was framed 4 years ago in 2017. If you remember, he was called a racist and he was kicked out of his own company. Well, he's just uncovered evidence and has released it, audio tapes. The PR firm that he hired for $6 million was comprised of a bunch of woke snots who decided they didn't like John Schnatter's conservative politics. So they planted stories that he's a racist, and that got him fired. It's unbelievable that these things are happening, but they are happening. If you think that branding is your biggest challenge, how about survival? It's no longer survival of the fittest, It's survival of the wokest. Just a few days ago in Oxford University in England, a bunch of professors in the music department decided that musical notation itself, writing notes on the bars, composing, that's a remnant of the colonial period, and that needs to go. How you're going to write and read music if that goes, I don't know. They've also decided that the classical period, including Mozart and Beethoven, it's too much focus on white European music from the slave period. So that needs to go too. What the hell is going on here? It's not just America anymore, it is worldwide. Just yesterday on CNN decided it's not possible to know a person's gender identity at birth, and there is no consensus criteria for assigning sex at birth. Thousands of years of biology out the window. Because when your daughter or son is born, you know if you have a daughter, you know if you have a son. The doctor knows it, the nurses know it, you know it. Everybody knows it. CNN doesn't know it. Because now sex is a social construct, it's no longer biology. Don't even bother going to medical school. There's no purpose. It gets better. Last week, the state of Georgia passed a new election integrity law to cut down on all of the fraud that it experienced during the presidential election in November. And there was a lot of it, and everybody knows it. Don't tell anybody. The woke mob will strangle you if you talk about this. Georgia decided we're not going to let this happen again. Well, wouldn't you know it, that the mob is outraged by this. 72 black executives from around the country have threatened to boycott Georgia now because of this. You have Ken Chenault, former CEO of American Express. Ken Frazier, outgoing CEO of Merck. Let's see. Raymond McGuire, former Citigroup executive. Ursula Burns, former CEO of Xerox. Richard Parsons, former chairman of Citigroup and CEO of Time Warner. And Tony West, the chief legal officer at Uber. But it's not just black executives. We have a whole list of major American corporations who are also outraged by this. Apple, Aflac, Bank of America, BlackRock, Cisco, Citigroup, Coca-Cola, Delta Airlines, Facebook, Google, Home Depot, JP Morgan, Chase, Major League Baseball threatens to pull out of the All-Star game in Atlanta because of this. And Joe Biden is right down with it. Microsoft, Porsche, and UPS. And here's the joke about Delta Airlines. Delta Airlines is with this whole cadre of morons saying that showing ID is racist. But look at these blacks at the Atlanta airport. How are they going to get on airplanes, especially a Delta airplane, without an ID? It's total garbage, but it's really happening. It comes down to this. All these companies are clamoring to improve their ESG scores. I talked about this before. It comes from the World Economic Forum in Geneva, Switzerland. ESG stands for environmental, social justice, and governance. And the more that there are for rigged elections, claiming that it's to help blacks, which is racist in itself because they're claiming that blacks are too stupid to get out IDs, even though they're smart enough to get IDs when they fly or when they do various and sundry things around life. You can't get a library card without an ID. In a lot of places, you can't get liquor without an ID. You can't open a bank account without ID. But for some reason, when it comes to voting, that's racist. Right, I told you before, American corporations are no longer American corporations. They report to the World Economic Forum in Geneva, Switzerland. And the World Economic Forum is setting the ESG rules. ESG scores drive all corporate behavior now. Look at Rachel Levine. who was the Secretary of Health of Pennsylvania, where I live. Rachel Levine is now the Assistant Secretary of Health for Joe Biden. Do you think Rachel Levine, who did exactly what Andrew Cuomo did by putting sick COVID patients back into nursing homes, do you think that qualifies Rachel Levine to be Assistant Secretary of Health? Yes, it does. When it comes to ESG, Rachel Levine is transgender, qualified. That's all it takes. Again, the theme of today is that equity trumps equality. Let's take a look at that. Equality is about ability. But just last week, Joe Biden said there's not a single thing that a man can do that a woman can't do as well or better. Not a single thing. So, of course, I have two examples here. A little boy peeing in the snow, peeing his name, and a weightlifter. Women can't do those things. So, Biden's statement, of course, like all of his statements, is ridiculous. But when it comes to equality, it's not just about physical ability, it's also mental ability. And men and women have equal mental ability. And equity is about fairness. Now, you were a little kid once, and maybe you've raised little kids. The biggest complaint little kids have is, that's not fair. So who decides fairness? Well, whoever controls the agenda decides fairness. And that's what's happening today. You remember I used the tortoise and hare example before. Perfect metaphor. You have the tortoise and the hare at the starting point. So according to the race officials, they're equal. They have equality. But the tortoise wins the race because the tortoise is the most qualified. Not because the tortoise is the fastest, but because the tortoise took the race seriously and the hare didn't. The hare actually has more innate ability, but the hare was a goof-off, and the tortoise won. Nowadays, the tortoise would win not because of this, but because the tortoise is deemed an underclass, and therefore it's unfair that the tortoise has to live in a shell. Therefore, the tortoise is going to be deemed the winner, and no race is required. You're just the winner. You don't have to run, nothing. You're just the winner. That's what's happening today. And ESG determines who's going to win the race. And companies have to have the right number of Hispanics, the right number of blacks, the right number of women to get good ESG scores. If they don't have what this big committee in Geneva, Switzerland decides, they lose the race. Now, how is all of this possible? I'm going to use another great metaphor. Pool. We have a pool table here. And we have the balls that are racked, and they represent unified population. And there's nothing that is a bigger enemy of a tyrant than a unified population. You have to split those babies up, get them angry at each other. So what do? You shoot a cue ball at them, which is saying you're a racist, you're a transphobe, you're a climate denier. And then what happens? Because tyrants must destroy unity. So what happens next? We have chaos. People are no longer unified. They're divided. They hate each other. That's what's happening in this country. We have chaos. We have entropy. And chaos enables conformity, which is what they want. When Biden wants everybody to wear a mask, he wants conformity. It doesn't matter whether the disease is completely eradicated. He's going to find another excuse for us to wear masks. And that is why companies are boycotting Georgia. It's the same thing. It's all about conformity and getting a good ESG score. If you want to be a part of the World Economic Forum, and if you want to conform to that, and if you want to vie for an ESG score, you don't even need to be in branding anymore. Just be a conforming, submissive robot. Do what Geneva, Switzerland tells you to do. Fire all of your creative, talented people. Just be robotic. And that's it, because you'll get a lot of money for it. There are Uyghurs being executed in China. And as long as companies keep their mouths shut about it, they'll make a lot of money. If they raise a stink about it, they won't. But if you still want somebody who's creative who can help you with your branding, you can call me. Go to marcrudov.com and we'll talk about it. Until next time.